Hello. This is very spontaneous. I don't think I've ever done a live on YouTube before, but I do them every week on Patreon. But I was going to record a kind of like a beginner brushstroke tutorial, and I was going to edit the video on YouTube and post it. But I decided, why not just go live? And I don't know if anybody will show up because I've never done this before, but if anybody does, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. But I'm going to be painting this, I think this is 10 inches. Let me measure it. 8 inches. So this 8-inch piece of wood. I got this on Amazon. These are kind of just like thinner. I usually use these more for practice. Hi Ranu, hi Sarah, hi Gail. All the Patreon supporters are here. So I'm just going to be painting this 8-inch round. So I did a black base and I used my favorite folk art multi-surface satin in pure black. But I did notice that it's a little bit rough, like there's some rough patches. So what I like to do is take this little sanding block. After I do the base, I just kind of like to sand down any rough patches. So I normally don't do this part on camera, so it might be a little obnoxious with the noise. But I just lightly do little circles over the rough patches. Hi Katya, Jan, Hillary. Then I just feel and so if you do it really lightly, it should just sand down the rough spots, but not necessarily take off the black paint. If you're using the multi-surface, it sticks pretty good. So typically after I sand it down, I won't have to do another coat. It's usually fine, but then I just rub off any of the residue. Leslie said, I just received my Thoughtful Dots paintbrushes, love them. So happy to hear. That is what we will be using for this tutorial today. So those of you who are just getting here, I just decided to randomly hop on live on YouTube because I never have before. And I'm kind of just going to be teaching a beginner brushstroke mandala. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. And then you can watch the replay after to do the actual tutorial. So most of my larger wood pieces that I get from Nateco have the center marked, but these ones from Amazon do not. So I was trying to find the center and I just happened to notice that it is exactly the size of my stencil, which made it really easy because then I just marked the center, but I'm really not that good at finding the center of circles. But if you need to find the center, there's a ton of videos on YouTube that will show you how to do that. But I marked my center. So I'm using, what did I grab? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 point or segment stencil. These ones are also from Amazon. So a lot of the tools that I use you can find in my Amazon shop, which I will link in the description of the video. But if you ever see me using something and you want to know if it's in my Amazon shop, the easiest way to find it is to just go to my website, which is thoughtfuldots.com, and then click on the Tools That I Use tab. And there you'll actually find I actually have some discount codes on there too for like the Rock Shop Co., which is blank rocks, oval dotting tools. I have a discount code, I think. So Easiest way to find that is my website, thoughtfuldots.com. I'm gonna grab my ruler and just bring these all the way out to the edge. How's everyone's day going today? If you guys end up liking this live, I might start doing them more often on YouTube, mainly for beginners. I teach like more advanced stuff on my Patreon, but I really want to do more for beginners. So that is what we're going to do today. I feel like some people have this idea that like beginners have to start with only dots, which is honestly how I started, but I don't think you have to start with only dots. I think it is very reasonable to assume that you can start as a beginner using a brush. You just need someone to show you how, which I can do. When I started painting though, I only did dots, and mainly because I didn't really know about brushstrokes yet, and I'm self-taught, so there wasn't really anybody to teach me brushstrokes. So I kind of had to learn on my own, but now I'm a teacher and I teach beginners, so I feel that as a beginner, you could totally start out doing brushstrokes. You just need to practice. Mandala dog Ranu said, I'm waiting at the airport embroidering and listening to my favorite voice. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Tara. Hi, is it Grisha? Hopefully I pronounced that right. We are just having a spontaneous paint date. I'm actually gonna pop this back on real quick because for tutorials, to make things easier, I like to use the little guide marks that are on here, just so that it's easier for people to follow along. But let me measure. So the distance between these are gonna make our circle guide marks, are about 1 centimeter. And then I'm getting my compass. I'm gonna lower my table down just so the video doesn't get super blurry as I do this. So guide marks are really important, especially for beginners. When I started painting, I did not use guide marks, and I didn't realize that I was making things a lot harder for myself by not using them. But I think I didn't use them because I was intimidated and I didn't quite understand how they worked or how they could help me. So if you're a beginner, I definitely recommend using guide marks. I always draw a set of vertical guide marks and then circular guide marks. And these just really help us keep everything nice and symmetrical. So that is a really important part when making mandalas, is keeping everything very symmetrical. So you could just use that. I'm gonna go in and divide these all again, just so that I have more guide marks to work with. Anna, Jan, hi. Stop Complaining is the username. Said not on Patreon yet, but soon. Hi, hi. So now I'm just dividing these all in half. I'm just eyeballing it, just trying to get right in the middle. It's okay if they aren't exactly the same distance apart, but they should be pretty close. So now we have all of our guide marks. It's kind of hard to get that like closer to the center ones. I'm gonna try to get one more in. And then I'll divide that one in half. Patty said, hi, Tara, never been on a live in YouTube before. This is my first time doing a live on YouTube. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I did a 12 segment stencil. I usually use a 16 segment, but we're gonna switch it up and do the 12. It just creates a little bit of a different style of mandala, but I always have both of these on hand, switching it up every once in a while. And I just pulled some random colors for this. I have this DecoArt Americana green tree. Ranu Mandala Doc got me hooked on this. I think you can only get this on the DecoArt website. I've never seen it in stores. So green tree, paradise green, peacock teal, periwinkle, purple cow. I'll put my table up again. Tara said, oh, I like green tree. Yeah, green tree is so pretty. It's like a very soft. If you don't have green tree and you want to follow the tutorial, sour apple's a good color too. You could probably tone it down with like a little bit of white or gray. So those are the colors. I'm kind of going in a green, blue, purple gradient. Mary Pooh, that's the username, says sour apple is my favorite green. Yeah, it's such a fun, vibrant color. So I haven't actually picked an accent color for this yet. I'm kind of leaning towards gold. I like gold. I use gold a lot as an accent. So I have some glorious gold that I just keep. These are like my two most used accent colors. I have gold and DecoArt White Pearl Metallics. But I'm going to use the gold today. And then I'll just be pouring paint into this paint palette as we go. Since this is geared for beginners, I did just want to show you guys my practice sheets. So I sell these on Etsy or on my website, but these are brushstroke practice sheets. So some people like to do the dots and practice the dots too, but I really just like them for the brushstrokes. So these are a really good way to get some practice in. I'm just gonna do a couple. 2/0 has been my favorite Thoughtful Dots brush. As of lately, I like this one and I like the size 0. But as you guys are watching, let me know if you have any questions about brush strokes. I know that's like a big thing that people want to learn and practice and get the hang of. So please let me know if you have questions. Gail asked, does anyone happen to have a list of colors that are only available on DecoArt website? That is a really good question. I do not, but that is something I would also be curious about. So I like to print my practice sheets on cardstock. So smooth. Yeah, I love this color. So a lot of my students, their paintings always come out a lot smaller than mine. And the #1 reason for that is I just use a lot of paint for everything. Like my dots, my brush strokes, I really load up my tools a lot with paint, so everything is like a lot bigger. But same with brush strokes. If you want a really thick, like plump, textured brush stroke, you've got to get a lot of paint. So it's easier to get a lot of paint on them when we're using like these big, deep paint pots. But you can still do it in just in one of these. But every time you dip, that's also what I really love about my brushes, is they hold a lot of paint. So the more that you dip, every time you dip, it's picking up more and more paint. So that's how you can get them really nice and thick. And also putting a lot of pressure. The more pressure you put, the thicker the brush stroke will be. Dimpool, sorry I don't know your name, said, was the live planned? This is so unexpected. No, this wasn't planned. I was going to record and edit and post a video on YouTube, but decided to just go live instead, and then people can watch the replay later if they want. I don't know if you guys can see on the camera, but they are very like thick and textured. So yeah, this will be a tutorial that you guys can watch the replay back, but feel free to ask questions while you're here if you have any. Dimples is me, Sandra R. Hi, Sandra. How are you? I miss your face. Glad I got to meet you. Hope I get to meet you again. I'm using the 15.5 dotting rod by Happy Dotting Company and Glorious Gold. So I'm getting a lot of paint. I dip mine in pretty good, especially for that center dot. We want a lot of paint. And just doing our best to get that in the center. And I'm just taking this 2.5 millimeter. It's funny that a lot of people that are on the live right now are also Patreon subscribers. You guys are the best. So supportive. Okay. Tara, do you have a gold Deserted Bliss? I don't know if I've seen, I don't know. Do you have a, or yeah, Bliss Drops. Do you make a gold? What color, what size? 1.5. Speaking of Bliss Drops, Tara, you guys might know that I love the Nuvo drops. That's kind of my go-to, but their pearl color, the ivory seashell, has been sold out everywhere. So we've been talking about it lately, and some people have been recommending the Bliss Drops. What's the color? This one, Mirage, as a replacement for the Nuvo ivory seashell, because they're literally sold out everywhere. It's crazy. Tara said she's working on a regular gold. Gold is probably one of my top colors. Gold and pearl as far as accent colors. Okay, I'm using the 1.5 stylus and green tree. And we are just going to start our ring of dots. These ring of dots are hard for a lot of people, myself included. This is probably the most tricky part of painting for me, is getting the ring of dots to be a consistent size, because they tend to get bigger as we go. But what I always say, especially for the first row, we're trying to get the dots as close to one another without touching, and then as close to the gold center dot without touching it, so that our paint doesn't run together. And then just doing our best to make them all a consistent size. And if you notice that they're like getting progressively bigger, just wipe your tool off, because it's building up paint every time you dip it, which will make them get bigger. Dot Fluence. Chris S said, hi Demi, everyone. Oh, how sad I can't watch. I have to go to bed. It's 11 p.m. here. Wish you lots of fun together. Thank you. This will be available for replay, so you can watch it anytime. Sleep well. Thanks for stopping by and saying hi. So I don't count these. Like, I don't do like I don't do a certain amount all the way around, which can make it tricky when you get to the end. Which also just reminded me I barely have any Q-tips left, which is scary. Hopefully we don't need them. But I just kind of like to eyeball when I get to the end, and I'll just count like 1, 2, 3. I think 3 will fit good there, but I might need to space them a little bit further apart. No, I think that'll be perfect. Make this one just a little bigger. Looks pretty good. Sorry, my throat is so scratchy today for some reason. I took some vitamins and I feel like they got stuck in my throat. Okay, so that was the 1.5 stylus. So for the next row, you could go up in tool size to the size 2, but what I am going to do is I'm going to stick with the 1.5, but I'm going to load more paint on it for the next row so that the dots are a little bit bigger. So when you're doing your rings of dots, each row you want the dots to be a little bit bigger. That will help fill in the gaps. If you stick with the same tool size for every ring, by the time you get to like your third or fourth ring, the dots will have really big gaps in between, which some people like the look of that. It kind of has that like sacred geometry spiral look. But for this, I want them to be a little bit bigger each row. So the next color, I'm going to do the Paradise Green. And I'm just going to load up more paint on the tool. You can also see I do this kind of like tappy motion sometimes. So every time you tap your tool, it's making the dots a little bit bigger. It's unloading more paint from the tool, which will make the dots bigger. So that kind of will help you build out your dots. I think that's another reason my paintings always end up bigger than everyone else's, is because I do that tapping motion to unload paint. Whereas if I just dipped and did one dot, look how much smaller that is than the rest. So by doing that tapping motion, that kind of builds out the dots a little bit. Tara says she does the tap too. It just gives you more control over the size of your dots. And you can really build them out to be pretty big. So on the next row, I will probably go up in tool size. I really just want to make this beginner friendly and spend a good amount of time on brush strokes. I love these colors together. They're like the last half of a rainbow, so green, blue, purple. Looks so good together. Okay, looks pretty good. So now I am gonna go up in size to the size 2. So I sold out of these stylus tools really quickly. I only had a small batch of them, but I updated them to be a better design and color coded. And the new ones should be arriving to me any day now. I think like tomorrow they'll be here. I'm so excited. I'm grabbing the Peacock Teal. And the size 2 stylus. So these are millimeters. You don't necessarily need to have this brand. You can use just like the ones that are on Amazon. You just want to figure out what size millimeters the tools are that you're using, and then just convert it to whichever ones I'm using. So for this, 2 millimeters, Peacock Teal. And we are dotting in between each dot from the previous row. Does anybody have any questions? We have about 33 people on, which is pretty awesome considering this was very spontaneous and unplanned. But I am here to answer any questions you guys might have related to this painting, or just any other questions you guys have. I love sharing any knowledge or info I can. So I'm still doing the tapping motion, just kind of building out the dots. I didn't really plan a pattern for this, just kind of gonna go with the flow today. Okay. I'm grabbing my Periwinkle. It's brand new, so I need to open it. And Periwinkle is such a pretty color too. Okay, so we just did the size 2. Now I'm gonna go to 2.5. And I'm gonna do the same thing. So just dotting in between each dot from the previous row. Ranu said I still can't get the plastic off like Yoli. I was just thinking that when I opened that new bottle. I definitely open my DecoArt bottles with my teeth, like the new ones when there's plastic on them. But our friend Yoli just like pulls them off so easy. I don't understand. I tried to do it her way and it just didn't work for me. Mary Pooh said I used the fake Cricut tool from Dollar Tree. What is that? I don't know what that is. Or a micro dotting tool that has like a sharp edge or sharp end. That opens them pretty good too. A pointing tool that is sharp to get the vinyl up. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, sounds like the perfect tool for that. Okay, so we use the circular guide marks to make sure that our patterns are all the same length. So as you're doing this, I just got to my first circular guide mark. So I'm looking at where my dots land on that circular guide mark all the way around. So they're pretty even. I can tell that my pattern's a little bit more over this way because these dots are pretty much at the circular guide mark or above it, and over here they're a little bit below. So it's just a tiny bit off, but if you get to this point and notice that your pattern's like way off, then you're gonna have to start working to correct it or even it out, which we can do over time. But mine looks pretty good as of now. I think I want to do just one more ring. That way I can get all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors in on this middle ring. So now I'm going to pour the purple cow. And I'm using the size 3 stylus. So these ones need to be nice and big or else I'm gonna get some gaps. So I'm loading a lot of paint on there. I also have one size up that is the Happy Dotting Company S4 tool. But my new tools that are coming, my brand, are gonna have extra large stylus ends that will be helpful when doing these rings. So as you can see, like there's some pretty good gaps there, but I'm just going to leave it. And then we'll put some little like gold micro dots in there to kind of disguise the gaps. Or if you don't like the gaps, then you would want to go up in tool size or just make your dots bigger so that there isn't as big of a gap. This kind of has a little bit of a gradient. The green in the middle and that first ring makes it look like it's glowy, which I love. So I will let this ring dry before we go in and do the little micro dots, just so that the dots don't accidentally run into the wet paint. So we will just let that dry. Kara said, I just picked up an interest in dot mandala painting. I found you on YouTube and your tutorials helped me. I'm so happy to hear. And I'm glad you got into mandala painting. It's so amazing. I've been doing it for 4 years and I'm still obsessed with it, which shocks me to this day. But it's pretty incredible. And there's a really great community of people here also. Okay. So question for you guys. I have a bunch of rhinestones. I've really been loving them lately. I can show you my little collection. These ones are like bluish tones and clear. And then I have these really pretty purple pink. So I know this is a beginner class, but like beginners are allowed to use rhinestones also, right? Why should they be excluded? Should we use rhinestones? We can use rhinestones, or I can just do dots. Do you guys have a preference? Let me know in the comments. But I'm thinking that these purple ones, because they have like a blue-green iridescent, which would go really good with this palette. What do you guys think? Rhinestones, no rhinestones? Mary Pooh, rhinestones would be fun. Jan said, woohoo, I love rhinestones. Okay, yes on rhinestones. Rachel said, can someone list the colors in the chat so I can write them down? I love these colors. Yes, and after I finish the video, I will put the colors in the description of the video, but real quick, green tree, paradise green, peacock teal, periwinkle, purple cow. And also this video will be available for replay, so you can watch it later and catch up on all the goodies. Roberta said, I use both dotting and diamond painting. Jill said dots. Sandra said go nuts with sparkle. Definitely use rhinestones. Okay. Let's go for rhinestones. I need to add a bunch of rhinestones to my Amazon shop, which I will do today. But I've already linked some of them in my Amazon shop that I bought. So if you guys are interested, I will leave the link to my Amazon shop in the description of this video. So you can check it out there. So I'm just gonna grab one rhinestone and a chalk or charcoal pencil. I'm using white charcoal pencil. This is Brushstrokes, also available in my Amazon shop. I'm just gonna pop this in the sharpener real quick. Make sure it's nice and sharp. So these ones are a little bit tedious to outline, but we're going to outline the rhinestone shape. That way we can finish our painting, varnish it, and then after varnishing, we will apply and glue the rhinestones on. So this is how we are able to varnish, because if we varnished over the rhinestones, it might make them look a little funny. So I'm outlining this rhinestone on every other vertical guide mark. And if you don't have rhinestones, let me give you the measurements. So this one is about 1/2 inch long. So if you don't have rhinestones, you can use a paintbrush and just paint on a diamond shape that's about 1/2 inch long. That way you don't feel like you have to go and buy rhinestones to complete this. You don't, we'll just adapt. That's really the only downside to painting live, is you never really get to see the fully finished painting because we have to let everything dry. I usually like to leave my paintings overnight to dry before varnishing. Then we gotta varnish, then we can do rhinestones. So I probably won't fully finish this until tomorrow. Okie dokie, let's see here. I'm going to grab my Glorious Gold and the size 2 stylus. And I'm going to make a dot at the tip of the rhinestone shape and then walk the dots down. We're just kind of outlining the rhinestone. So if you're not a huge like gold person, you can, I mean, you can use any color accent, but another good one would be like a pearl accent color. My favorite pearl is the DecoArt White Pearl Metallics. That would look really good with this. It's really all I can think of. Gold or pearl. I usually just stick to basics when it comes to accent colors. I'm just wiping my tool off. So let me think here. There are so many different ways we could do this. I think we will just keep it pretty basic. I'm going to grab my 2/0 Thoughtful Dots brush, and I'm just getting it wet first. Nope, we're not using that. And I'm going to use the green. So the Green Tree 2/0 brush. So just kind of outlining, starting with the thick part here, so using a lot of pressure, and then lightening up on the pressure towards the tip. And then you just want to make sure all of your brush strokes end on the same circular guide mark. That will make sure that everything is the same length. So we will be doing this brush stroke, then doing some little walking the dots on the tip, and then doing one more brush stroke. So you always want to think ahead. So we know we're going to be doing one more brush stroke after this. So this is a pattern, this is a pattern, a petal, petal. So you see this vertical guide mark going right through the center of each petal. So for your second brush stroke, you want to make sure that it stays on either side of this vertical guide mark that's going through the center. That will help make sure that you have enough space, but that is also whatever pattern you're doing, you want to make sure that it comes to this guide mark right here so that we're filling in the gaps there. I love this green. It just pops. What is everyone up to? I don't usually do lives on this platform, so I'm curious if there's anybody new, any newbies or beginners, or what is going on in your world. Has anybody been doing any markets? I know markets are going on right now. Jan said, crazy jealous of those brushstroke swooshes. I just love me some brushstrokes. Okay, now we're going to take the 2.5 stylus and the glorious gold, and we're going to dot at the tip of the flower petal. And just walk the dots down just along the tip. So whenever I'm doing double brush strokes, I like to do this little walking the dots pattern at the tip because it kind of breaks up the brush strokes so that they're not just like blending one into the other. It's kind of a little barrier. Anita said, hi Demi, this live is such a pleasant surprise. You were the best. Thank you for stopping by. Mary Pooh, I'm about to varnish my pumpkin. Nice. Dark Star says, I'm a newbie. I have painted a few so far. How is it going for you? How were your first few paintings? My very first few paintings were not good. But I also was using the thickest paint and had no idea about paint consistency. So once I figured that out, it was a lot better. Anita said, watching you paint is my midday decompression. Oh, I love that. Isn't it so relaxing? All right, I'm gonna grab that same 2/0 brush. So I like to do some practice strokes just with a wet brush so you can see. This also helps me with spacing because I want to make sure that our petals are coming together in the center here but not quite touching each other. So it's kind of a big gap. I could go up in size on the brush, but to keep it safe, I think I'm going to stay at the 2/0. And then just kind of looking to see where I want all of my brush strokes to end. Dark Stars said they are surprisingly good. I have posted them on the Facebook group. Awesome. I'm glad they're good. That's encouraging when your first paintings are good and you feel good about them. That's great news. So 2/0 brush and the Paradise Green. I'm just kind of going in the gradient order. And what I mean by that is like I chose to put these colors in the rainbow order, so green, blue, purple. So this, I just did green. I'm going to be doing the Paradise Green next and kind of going in that gradient. So this green also just feels a little liquidy, more liquidy than normal. Since it feels a little liquidy, I left more of a gap between the first brush stroke and this one just because I don't want it to run together. Jill said, new to all of this, still intimidated by swooshes, disabled and recently widowed. I'm so sorry. So controlling the shaking in my hands is a challenge, but really enjoying this as it really helps manage my tremors. Well, I'm glad that you found mandala painting. I know that brushstrokes can definitely be intimidating at first. They just take some practice. And once you get it down, they become a lot more fun and less stressful. I know a few people who, when they first started doing brush strokes, would sweat and hold their breath and get really nervous to do them, which is normal, but practice helps so much with that. The more times you do it, the more it becomes muscle memory and the less nervous you'll be doing them on a piece. Erin said, brand new here. My dots look like smudges. Can you explain that a little bit more? I know it's hard when we're just doing a chat. I can't see your paintings, but if you can explain to me a little bit more what smudges mean, maybe I can help. I actually was going through my closet today and I found the rock, the very first rock that I ever painted. I keep it so that I can show people. Maybe I'll go grab it in a second and show you guys if you haven't already seen it by now. But it's funny just to compare. I like showing my first rock, especially to newbies, so they can see how far I've come, because my paintings now are a lot different. Erin said, yours look like bubbles and mine are flat like fingerprints. Flat like fingerprints. Just hearing that, my first thought is you probably need more paint and that your paint might be a little bit too thick. So I actually have a beginner series here on YouTube that goes through all the basics, and I have a video dedicated to paint consistency. You might want to check that one out. That's just my first thought. I'm gonna grab my rock real quick so you guys can see it. This is the first rock that I ever painted. So yeah, I wanted to give up after this because I was following an inspo picture from Pinterest that looked nothing like this, so I was very discouraged, but I didn't realize that my paint was just way too thick. So once I figured out that it needed to be thinned down a little bit, my next few rocks after this one were a lot better. Okay, let me think where I want to go from here. We could do just like another. I kind of want to incorporate either more rhinestones or mirror pieces. What do you guys think? Should we do rhinestones and mirrors or just rhinestones? I have these I can't decide. Or we could do a swoosh and then maybe another. Sorry guys, give me one sec. There's so many patterns that we could do. Bye Ranu, thank you for being here. I also have a pattern book. I'm just grabbing it real quick. So sometimes when I get stumped with patterns, I have this book that I made that has a bunch of different patterns in it. So then I can look at my piece and kind of look at the different patterns and kind of figure out where I want to go from there. So I made this pattern book. We actually made it together on Patreon. So if you're interested, there's 4 classes with all different patterns that we made together on Patreon. But this kind of just helps me if I get stumped. I kind of like this guy. I haven't done this in a while. Can you see that one? I kind of like that. Maybe that one will be fun. Kind of looks like a little spider. It's a lotus, a little lotus. Andrea said, what do you use to thin paint? I use Liquitex fluid medium. So this is what I use when my paint is too thick. That makes it more thin. So I am going to, my brush strokes end at this circular guide mark right here. So I'm gonna go in between each petal at that vertical guide mark, and I'm gonna go down 1, 2 guide marks, and that's where I'm going to do a little swoosh. I'm going to use my Nuvo drops in gold, in mustard gold. This is a 3D dimensional paint. If you do not have Nuvo drops, you can use just the regular glorious gold and a stylus tool to make your swooshes. So starting here, going down 1, 2. And then I'm using my micro dotting tool. It's a little dirty. To swoosh down. So then you just want to make sure your swooshes are all starting on the same guide mark so that they're the same length. So if you don't have Nuvo, you can use Glorious Gold. I would probably use the largest stylus tools, so maybe like the 3, to make a big gold dot, and then use a smaller stylus tool to drag the paint down. And we're doing this on the vertical guide mark. And then we're going to make that little flower pattern. I'm just trying to find the right size tool here. I feel like I'm missing one of my Happy Dotting Company tools. So I actually want a bigger one. So I'm gonna use the 6.5. And now I'm gonna go to the Peacock Teal. I'm gonna make a dot. So the brush stroke ended at this circular guide mark right below it. So I want my blue dot to stay below that guide mark also. So we want our pattern, this pattern, to stay below that guide mark so that that finishes off the pattern and then sets us up for our last row. I just picked these colors on a whim when I decided to go live, and I actually really, really love them. Tara said, Demi, how long do you let your base coat dry before putting grid lines on? So I used to use a paintbrush to brush on my base coat, and the paintbrush, it made the base color go on really thick. So when I used to use the paintbrush, I would have to let it dry like overnight for it to fully dry before I could put my guide marks on. Because if you didn't know, especially for the beginners, if your base coat isn't fully dry, it'll be really hard to get your guide marks on. They either won't show up or you'll have to like push really hard and it could get stuck in the paint. So you want a really dry base coat. So Tara, recently I switched over to sponge brushes for my base coat, and the sponge, you like get it a little bit wet and then you use it to do the black base, and the sponge makes the paint go on a lot thinner, so it dries so quick, like in an hour or less, and I can draw on my guide marks right after that. So yeah, I definitely recommend that, trying the sponge brush. That like cut the drying time by so much. Love, love, love this palette. Erin said, hey, I didn't know you were doing a live today. We'll have to watch the beginning later on. Hi, Erin. I decided to hop on randomly today, just public on YouTube instead of private on Patreon. Just, I don't know, just for fun. Why not? Before we go any further, I'm going to use the Nuvo in Mustard Gold. And I'm going to do the dots to fill in the gaps on that last purple row, because I got some pretty big gaps there. So I am filling those in with some dots. If you don't have Nuvo, you can just use the regular gold, glorious gold. Okay, so now those gaps are a little bit filled in. Mary Pooh said, what kind of brush? What do you mean? Okay, I'm taking the 1.5 stylus and the Periwinkle. Can you show one? What kind of brush are you talking about? Like the regular paint brushes or the one for the base that we were talking about? So I'm starting this at, I want the pattern to be below that circular guide mark. So this one's actually going to start over here, and we're just doing a little swoosh around the blue one. Sponge brush, yes, I can show you the sponge brush. I'm out of all the big ones because I use them on my larger pieces, but these are the smaller ones. These are from Hobby Lobby, but they make wider ones that I usually have. But I'm sure you could also find some on Amazon. I might even have some in my Amazon shop if you want to check. Yeah, sponge brushes were a game changer for me when it comes to base coat. It just applies such like a thin, even layer. Andrea said I would have never thought to put those colors together. So beautiful. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna use that same size, the 1.5. And now we're going to Purple Cow. And these ones I'm going to make slightly shorter. So we're just creating like this little flower shape. It looks like either like a lotus or like a blooming or budding flower. Andrea said Home Depot and Lowe's has the sponge brushes too. That is good to know. I tried using like a paint roller one time and it just didn't work for me. I don't know, it was like leaving a lot of ripples and wasn't going on smooth. So that's when I decided to try just the sponge but brush on instead of roll on. And it worked out really well. Okay. So I was going in the gradient. So if we kept going in the gradient, we would now go to green, which actually I feel like is fine. So let's do green. So this one's going to be slightly shorter. Cute. And then I think I want to end with a brush stroke, but I'm just trying to figure out which color. Because if I kept going in the gradient, we would be going to Paradise Green next, but this last brush stroke was Paradise Green, so that's a lot of green grabbing our attention already. So I kind of want to keep it purple, so I'm going to use the Periwinkle and the 2/0 brush, and these ones are going to curve a little bit, so they're starting and then coming down into like a little curve. You can also try using a stylus tool for these if that. I'm starting to create like a kaleidoscope shape. Erin said, "You're very talented. I appreciate your expert advice. Thank you. Such beautiful pieces of art." Thank you. That is so nice. I really appreciate that. When starting painting, I really had no intention of becoming a teacher, but it just kind of happened. I'm very grateful for it now and love it. So I think I can fit one more brush stroke under there. I'm gonna do the 2/0 and the purple cow. I'm just gonna do one more. And it's just kind of going up against the curve of the previous one. Sometimes to do short brush strokes like that, it can be a little bit tricky. So if you're doing like a shorter brush stroke and it's hard, it might be worth grabbing a stylus tool and trying it that way. Tara said, "Hee hee, I love the sound when you wash the brush." It's funny, it does make a funny sound. I always want to fill in the little gaps. You could leave it like that with the black space. It just kind of makes like a kaleidoscope, but I really want to fill that in right there. Maybe with blue, Peacock Teal. So just putting pressure and then lightening up to just fill. Oop, that was way lower. I might try to fix that. I don't know, or I can just go over it. Or I can just leave it and hope nobody notices. There, that was a little bit better. Lori said the section you're working on reminds me of a dragonfly. Yes, it does. And these colors too are like very whimsical. Maybe we name this one Dragonfly something, because it really does. And we're gonna have the rhinestones in there. It's actually really pretty. Okay, next, I'm going to grab that purple rhinestone again. Yeah, this one, you guys should help me think of a name for this one. Something to do with dragonflies. So I'm going to be doing a pattern. I'm finishing with a lot of brush strokes. So we just did like a brushstroke pattern right here. So instead of doing another brushstroke pattern right above it, I'm going to go to this guide mark instead and do a brushstroke pattern in between all those brushstroke patterns. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to outline my rhinestone on every vertical guide mark. Someone should ask ChatGPT what is a good name for a mandala painting that looks like dragonflies. I can't think of any off the top of my head. It is funny though, when I was younger, when we used to use AOL Instant Messenger, my screen name was Dragonfly Demi. Oh. Dragonfly Dreams. I love that. Okay, so now we have our rhinestones on every other. Darn, now I'm looking at it and we have rhinestones here. I would have preferred to have rhinestones on the opposite guide marks that these ones were at. It's not a huge deal, but I don't know, just symmetry. Kara said, where can I get the rotary to set my work on? So this right here is a Lazy Susan. I have this one linked in my Amazon shop. Okay. So this is like a symmetry thing. Do you guys understand what I mean? Like when I say there's a rhinestone here and now here, where I would have preferred maybe for it to be over here so that they're alternating. So right now they're in the same guide mark, which isn't a big deal. It could be fine. Or what I could do is add a rhinestone on every guide mark. That's the cool thing about mandala painting, is there are so many options. So if we do every single guide mark, it'll be a tighter pattern, or if we do every other vertical guide mark, then it will be a more flowy pattern with more brush strokes. Lori said, I agree, the alternating gems. So do you think I should leave it the way it is, or maybe add one more rhinestone so that we're doing it on all? Tara said, put it above the dragonflies. Everyone, okay. So we could just cancel these ones out and do them above the dragonflies. Jill said, how about every guide mark, but alternating between rhinestones and mirrors. That would be pretty too. I don't know if I want to incorporate mirrors at this point, and they'll be the mirrors are a lot longer, so they'll come to about here. Let me outline above the dragonfly, and then we just have to decide if we want the rhinestones on every vertical guide mark or every other above the dragonfly. There's really no right or wrong way. That's the other cool thing about mandala painting. Jan said, I think flowy matches better. Dark Star said above the dragonflies would be more balanced. Yes, exactly. Okay. You guys are with me. So then if we want it more flowy instead of a tighter pattern, then we will just go above the dragonflies only and just kind of ignore the other ones that I did. I'm glad this is making sense. Sometimes I explain things. I'm like, I don't know if that is coming across the way I want it to. Okay. So most of you are saying just above the dragonflies. So that is what we will do, just above the dragonflies. So what I'm going to do now is take the size 2, and let's think here. We could do, so size 2 stylus, glorious gold paint. I'm gonna do what we did earlier, make a dot and then walk the dots down. Yeah, I think with the dragonfly, with the like purple and green colors is very like garden, fairy, whimsical. And I did not have this pattern planned. It just kind of ended up this way, which is fun. I do also have these green gemstones that are iridescent that have some purple and blue. These ones might be pretty too. All right. Dragonfly gems. I love that. Dragonfly gems. That's a good name. Okay. Now I'm going to be doing like finishing with a bunch of brush strokes. So I want to go in some type of gradient from green to purple or purple to green. So what I'm looking at color wise is we have a lot of green here and then a lot of purple here. So I kind of want to start with purple and end with green. I feel like that will be a good combo because if I start with green and end with purple, I think the purple ending over here will be too similar to like this pattern. So I think starting with purple, ending with green will be a good balance of this row compared to the last. Okay. So let's start with green tree. No, purple. Let's start with purple cow and the 2/0 brush. And these ones, I'm going to make this shape where we kind of make it a little bit straighter. So it's coming all the way to the edge of the board and then down. So instead of it curving outward, we're giving it more of a straight tip. Bye, Patty. Thanks for coming. Excuse me, my throat just got so dry. Jan said, are you just using less paint on the brush to make them thin? Maybe less pressure, I would assume. Yes, both of those things. Great question. So if you look at these brush strokes compared to this one I just did, I used the same brush, 2/0, but you can see the thickness and size is way different. So on these ones, I am using less paint and less pressure to make them a little bit thinner. Yes, great question. Tara said, Jan, I'm having toast with raspberry jam right now. That actually sounds so good. I haven't been, I was making sourdough for a while and I took a break and I'm like seriously missing it right now. I even took my starter out today to feed it and maybe make some bread tomorrow. Okay, so this one came all the way out to the edge. Next, I'm gonna go down to the next circular guide mark, and that's where I'm going to start my brush stroke. 2/0 brush, Periwinkle. So this one's slightly shorter. Pushing, and then letting up with the pressure towards the tip. I'm so eager to see how this turns out. It's very different than I was envisioning. It just kind of went its own direction, which is cool. think once we get to the green tones, it will really pop. So next, Peacock Teal, same 2/0 brush. And again, slightly shorter. This is totally random, but has anybody watched The Perfect Couple on Netflix? My husband and I like binge watched it. I thought it was really good, but reading reviews online, some people did not like it. Kara said I haven't seen it. It's good if you like, I don't know about like true crime, but mystery, murder mystery, whodunit type thing. It was entertaining. Okay, now we're going to Paradise Green. Same brush. It's new on Netflix if you guys are into that kind of thing. Lori said we binged it too. It was so good. Unexpected ending for sure. Yeah, same. Kara said I mostly watch Love is Blind and The Perfect Match and Ultimatum. I love Love is Blind. I've seen every season. My husband and I have watched every season together. I really think it's a good show. Okay, slightly shorter. Kara said, me too, I love watching Love is Blind. I think it's a good show. I don't know, sometimes my husband's like, you know all reality TV is scripted, right? And I'm like, yeah, it totally could be, but also I follow a lot of the contestants on social media, and I feel like a lot of the people that get married stay together and like are having babies now and stuff. So I don't feel like that's scripted. Maybe I'm naive, but it seems like a legit experiment that works. All right, so since we went every other vertical guide mark on this pattern, this is gonna have to be a big pattern in order for the petals to meet up at this. So this pattern needs to meet up at this vertical guide mark. So I think I'm gonna do a green tree and then a last maybe gold, because I need another color to fill in that. So I might even grab a thicker brush, maybe the 0. I'll try the 0. Because I want them to be nice and thick, and I definitely need more paint. So this one isn't necessarily shorter, but it's reaching longer. So we want our pattern to start reaching out because we got to get over to this guide mark to fill in the gap. This green just makes everything pop. I love it. Jan said, I've lost the new person can do this vibe. All those swooshes are intimidating to me. Yeah, it's really hard for me to like do like super beginner stuff anymore. I try, but it always just, I can't help it. So yeah, I guess if you have any beginner questions, now's a good time to ask, but yes, I do understand that it can be intimidating. Okay, I'm gonna do the Glorious Gold and the Zero. And these ones I'm just gonna make really long reaching. So pretty much bringing them all the way out to the vertical guide mark that goes through the center. And that will make the patterns meet in the middle so that there's no gap. That definitely looks like a kaleidoscope-y. Tara said, I feel like the best way to learn swooshes is to just jump into it and practice a ton. Yes, exactly. The first time I ever did brushstrokes, I did it on an actual mandala piece. I just went for it. I used a brush that was like really short and stumpy, not the best for brushstrokes, but I did it anyways and I learned as I went. I think that's the problem, is most people are just too scared to just start, but that's really the way you learn, is by just doing it. And it doesn't always look pretty in the beginning, but you just have to keep practicing. Not having expectations of how it should look your first time or in the beginning is key, and not comparing yourself to others is key. As Nike says, just do it, says Tara. Lori said those look like colorful moths facing the dragonflies. Love it. Yeah, this became so like, I don't know, it's really cool. Dark Star said, be brave. Yes. Be brave. Okay, what do we want to do here? I think I want to do a little gold swoosh with Nuvo. Darlene said, gorgeous, thank you. So I'm going to do a 3 swoosh pattern here. I think that's why I hesitate to do beginner videos on YouTube. It's just really hard for me to like go backwards. Like I tried the other day doing an all dot pattern and I just struggled. Like I could not, it's just not my style anymore. So it's really hard for me to like, I don't know, So I feel like the most value I can be to beginners is just showing up here and answering questions and letting you guys watch me paint live. But really, to get the most out of it would be to ask questions and observe. And my patterns might not be like the most beginner, but I feel like beginners can still get a lot of value from it. Pretty, and then what do I want to do? I want to put something in this gap, maybe a different, well, let me think. I was gonna do a different color Nuvo, but I'm just going to do one more gold. So a big dot, and then using my micro dotting tool to drag into a little teardrop. Dark Star said, I have watched a lot of your older videos and learned so much. I'm so happy to hear. I do want to help beginners out more here on YouTube. I'm trying to think of ways to do that. I think doing more lives. Yeah, maybe just like Q&As. Gotta learn the brush strokes though, especially if you want to do my tutorials, they all include brush strokes, so gots to learn. And I'm gonna take the gold and Kara said, I enjoy watching your live videos and chatting with you. Thank you so much for being here. I love chatting too. It's so much more fun to like chat while we paint than just being by myself. Okay, 2.5 and the glorious gold. And there's this guide mark right here at the edge. So I'm going to dot and walk the dots on that guide mark all the way out to the edge. What did we say? Dragonfly gems or dragonfly dreams? I love that. Alrighty. I think that's where I'll end it. I'm trying to think of what I would add after it dries. After it dries, I will probably do Nuvo top dots on this Peacock Teal blue dot. Dark Star said, I am left-handed and have trouble smudging wet paint near the border. How do I prevent that? So I don't know if you follow Mandala Doc, Ranu. She's left-handed, and I think she was going to put a left-handed tutorial on her YouTube channel. You should definitely check it out. She's an amazing left-handed teacher and can probably help you out a lot more than I can. She was on this live earlier, but she had to go because she's at the airport, but she is a great resource for that. So I will top dot that, and then I think that's it. I think everything else looks really good. Once we get the rhinestones on, it's gonna be magical. What do you guys think? That was fun, right? Should I do more lives on YouTube? Why Robert said, where do you get your paint pots? So these are my favorite extra large paint pots from Hobby Lobby. So you can get these at Hobby Lobby stores, or I buy mine online on their website. If you Google Hobby Lobby XL paint pots, they should show up. Do you guys have any questions before we get going? So just as a closing, if you like my tutorials, make sure to check out my Patreon. I have like over, well, I think close to 100 tutorials on Patreon now, which is crazy. So if you join there, you get access to all of them instantly. We also just have such a good community over there, like a nice community group chat where we all get together and talk and send pictures, and yeah, it's really amazing. So I'll try to do some more on YouTube, but I'm over on Patreon teaching live class every Saturday. I just love painting, if you couldn't tell. So Nala said, do we need to use gesso before we start painting? You totally can do a gesso or gesso before your base coat. I personally do not. I like just using the Folk Art multi-surface. It really adheres to the surface, but if you're working on something that's like more of a rough surface, you might want to use gesso. So it just depends on what you're working with. If you do canvas, sometimes gesso is really good. Okay. Well, we will end it here, and I will add all of my Amazon shop links, my Etsy shop, all of that good stuff for tools, paint colors, all in the description of the video. All right, thank you guys. See ya.